I have a lot of really great women in my life. My mother, my grandmother, I have three older sisters that have always looked out for me and been very encouraging. But I think my biggest role model is Justice Sonia Sotomayor. I had the opportunity to work with her at the Supreme Court for a few years, and she really taught me the value of just being a good person. The importance of being a good person when you're in a position of leadership. Obviously, being a good person in all types of roles, but especially how being caring of others and being generous and always being humble has such, it reflects so much on your type of leadership and how you manage other people, and the decisions that you make and who you include in your leadership. She's someone that also expects the best of herself, but also of others. And I think that that's kind of a model that I wish to emulate in terms of, me first, and then, I'm doing this first, and then I can expect that same type of behavior of people that I work with. And she's also just taught me of, just being prepared, like thinking big and dreaming, but also being very prepared to have that good karma come your way, whenever it does, whenever fate kind of intervenes with your life. I think it's really important to recognize our role in our lives, that we have to be active players in it. Certain things happen that are out of our control, but if we can prepare ourselves and make sure that in the process of being a good person and having a good heart, all of these things kind of mix together to make a good concoction for a life and a professional experience. In my personal experience, the biggest obstacle hasn't been necessarily others imposing a narrative of being disenfranchised on me, but me kind of reiterating in my own head and making myself feel insecure. Like being like a poor Latina, like what's my place here? I always have to constantly prove myself, or at least telling myself that that's where I'm at. And I think that I've been trying to own it more recently, in the sense that this is the background that I'm coming from, and I'm here and I'm present and I'm prepared, and I should be here, and I have a role and a seat at the table. And I think that even just changing that mentality within ourselves, I'm starting to realize now, as I'm mentoring younger students, that I need to have that mentality. I need to tell myself that I'm ready and I'm prepared and I have a seat at the table and that I deserve it, because that way I start believing it, and that way people below me or younger than me will start believing that as well and say, okay, she's kind of owned her story and her narrative and she's doing fine, so I can as well. I think when I see older Latinas that have come to a position where I see them so empowered and so strong, I think Frances Colon, who spoke at the Anima Summit earlier today, just had such a strong presence and such a confidence about her that I know that wasn't always there. That she may have had many insecurities and may still have them. Regardless of the narrative that was being imposed, I think it's really owning our story and recognizing the value that we add because of the backgrounds we come from. We have a perspective that many people do not have. Regardless of if it's a different socioeconomic background or a different cultural background, we have this different worldview that adds so much to the conversation. And I think really recognizing that those points have a place in the conversation is important, and making sure that we speak up when the conversation is had, and that we make sure that those perspectives are being integrated, because too often they're considered irrelevant or they're not even up for discussion. And I think because they're not up for discussion, we say, well, I guess it's not my place to speak. But I think that more and more I'm trying to say, like, no, this is where I'm coming from and this is why I feel different about this issue. And always remembering that it's precisely because of the background that I come from and because of my narrative that my experience is different.